Hey yo, this is Dash, and today I'm going to be taking my Mete MC9LS and I'm going to be adding the factory 90-degree Canik flat trigger to it. Join me as I get it taken care of. Before this video gets started, I want to tell you to watch this video in its entirety before you start disassembling your pistol, because there are things that I do that I just do because I've done them before that caught me off guard because I hadn't seen it and or done it in a while. So I'm going to caution you to watch this video in its entirety before you start disassembling your pistol. One last thing before we get going. I am by no means a professional. I'm just a regular guy who likes Caniks, and I happen to want to help other people be able to get to a level of comfort in taking apart, cleaning, and I won't say smithing because this is definitely no gunsmithing, and working on your own firearms at home. All right, so full disclosure, here is my factory Canik 90-degree brake trigger. This was, or I did have this installed in another one of my Canik pistols. But when you get if you order this trigger from Canik, and or if you are using a Freedom Smith trigger, which is one of the other popular trigger replacements, or a trigger that you would use to change to a flat trigger or a different trigger, the pin is going to be out a little bit. And this is so that to make the installation of the trigger easy. You'll see there's a groove on this side of the trigger. That's where the trigger bar goes into. And the whole thing is you kind of have to wrestle it, and it will take some doing, but you put your trigger bar into that hole. Make sure that the orientation is correct. You put the trigger bar in that hole, line everything up, and then push that pin through that hole, and you will then have the trigger shoe installed on the trigger bar. Now, again, full disclosure, I had to take this trigger out of one of my other pistols, hence you might see some extra parts and pieces in my work area here. But at this point, I'm going to go ahead and get my Mete MC9LS taken apart and taken down to get the old trigger out so we can get the new trigger in. All right, so the first thing, obviously, we're going to check and make sure that the pistol is free and clear. There's nothing there and nothing down in the chamber. I'm going to go ahead and close the pistol, pull it back, open it up, take the slide off, remove the slide from the grip. We don't really have to do anything with the slide today, so I'm just going to put that off to the side. Now, our grip, there are multiple ways you can take your grip apart, but for the most part, we need to take a few pins, a few of the push pins or roll pins out. There's a roll pin in the back we have to push through. There's a roll pin on the slide stop that we have to push through. There's a roll pin on the takedown pin that we have to, there's a bar that we have to push through. And there's a roll pin or just a pin in the front that we have to push out. So first things first, I'm going to start and I'm going to make my way from front to back. So I'm going to take the front roll pin or front pin out. Just going to use the tool and line it up with a hole in my block here. Now you don't have to have this fancy block that came with this punch pin set. I used a roll of tape, just like a roll of painter's tape or masking tape. And we have our first pin out. I'm going to take it and put it somewhere where I know where it is. Though the front pin and the back pin are exactly the same, I'm going to take my rear pin, push it out the same exact way, straight out. I'm obviously going to check and make sure make sure these pins are fine. There's no damage or anything on these pins. I'm going to wipe them off while I have them out. There's a little bit of oil on them. I'm just going to wipe them off. Make sure they're clean and inspect them. All right, next pin I'm going to take off is going to be the takedown pin. So this pin, you have to make sure that the takedown catch or latch, which one is it? Takedown, I'm looking at my schematic here. Number 7 is the locking lever, sorry. Make sure that locking lever, you keep your finger on it over top of it, or else Yeah. Asking me how I know that you need to keep your finger on it. So all I'm going to do is keep my finger on it, apply pressure to the button, push it straight through. Now the takedown catch pin and this takedown catch pin, and it says takedown catch piece. All right. So this is going to be retained in the grip of the pistol. It cannot come out. So all you have to do is take the lever, or I don't know if this is a lever, whatever this piece is called, number 9. So this is the takedown catch, the actual takedown catch. I'm gonna move it off to the side. Now the locking lever, this is what this is. This is considered a locking lever. I'm just gonna turn it upside down. There's a spring and a detent underneath that, as well as the lever. We're gonna make sure we keep track of where those are. Gonna take that out, remove it. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do is take the slide stop spring off of the slide stop. And I'm just gonna stick my finger, actually, I'm just gonna use this tool to pry the spring off of the slide stop. I just use the tool to go down and pull it up and lift it up over the slide stop. So now the slide stop can stay up and the spring doesn't push it back down. At this point, I'm going to hold the slide stop off of the grip or off of my block just enough to allow me to push the bar through. Come on. All right, push it through. Now I have to move it out enough to be able to take the right side slide stop, and we're going to lift it up 90 degrees and pull it off of the pistol. And then the slide stop, the bar will come completely out. I'm going to take this out and wipe it down before I forget. Slide that off to the side. Now, before you take out the locking block, this is the locking block. Before you take out the locking block, make sure you know where the slide stop spring is. Make sure you know where the slide stop spring is. So I'm going to push up on the trigger so that the locking block can come out. And with that being said, the takedown spring the slide stop spring, this little bar, if you lose this bar, you will not be having a good time, is free. I'm going to take it and put it down. The slide stop spring on this particular pistol goes into the side of the locking block. I'm going to lift up on the locking block with the trigger, and then also pull up on this is the 19, the ejector from the back of the pistol. It might take a little bit of finesse to get this up and out, but it will come out. There's nothing holding it in. So we're going to lift these two things up at the same time. Be mindful, this is the locking pin. It can come out now because the locking block is free. I'm going to take this and set it down. I took the trigger shoe, the locking block, the trigger shoe, and the trigger bar are separated, and the ejector from the back of the pistol. I'm gonna take all of these things and wipe them down just to clean them up, look at them, make sure that there's nothing glaringly wrong with them. Again, this is my brand new pistol, so there shouldn't be anything wrong with it, but I'm gonna wipe all of these things down. Just set that off to the side. My trigger shoe, same thing. It is pretty fairly clean because it is fairly new, but there is a little carbon on here, so I'm just gonna wipe that off and down. Also take the opportunity while everything is completely out of the grip to wipe it down. And make sure there's no issues with anything there. All right, so Now that we have everything completely disassembled, it is at this point we have to, I'm gonna say worry about, but start to tackle the removing of the trigger shoe from the trigger bar. Now, conveniently, the punch that you receive from Canik has a small little indentation. That indentation is exactly how much you need to slide the trigger shoe pin out in order to move the trigger shoe just enough to release it from the bar. All right, so the next step, or now that we have everything completely free of the pistol, we can work on the trigger shoe and the trigger bar. You'll see two roll pins on the trigger shoe. The upper pin is going to be where the trigger pivots with the trigger safety. The lower pin is going to be where it pivots on the trigger bar. So you have to remove or slide the pin, and you see this is the Canik punch. This Canik punch has a wider section and a more narrow section. That is just the amount that you need in order to push the pin out just enough so that the trigger shoe can come out and leave you just enough space for that pin to remain in place and be easily installed. So we're going to, from the side where the trigger bar is, I'm going to push away from the side where the trigger bar is. Remove it just enough, this pin just enough, so that the trigger bar can be released. So now that we have the trigger bar released, I'm going to wipe down all into the crevices here. Now this part is the tricky part. Lining the trigger back up with the trigger bar in order to tap and push everything in where it needs to be. What I have found, the easiest way to do this is to take your punch, line it up with the trigger bar and the pin, and push everything through at the same time. When I say this is a tricky operation, this is a tricky operation. I've also found that using a pair of pliers or something along those lines is one of the easiest ways to get this particular operation done, because there's not very much that, like, there's not much that I can do to keep these things lined up. I'm going to try, and let's see if I can tap this in. And no, my bar came out. So I'm going to try this again. And this will test your patience for sure. But you can get it done. You will be able to get it done. It's just going to take some patience. Obviously, make sure that you have the trigger bar in the correct orientation. The bumps and everything like that need to be pointing up. Try to line everything back up. Use my punch. All right, it's lined up. See if I can. The last time I did this, I used a pair of pliers with my pin in. Let's see if I can tap down on the trigger. Just trying different methods here to see what works best, other than getting a pair of pliers and gripping everything together. I'm going to get pliers. All right. I'm going to try to hold everything together. And with my pliers, now be mindful, this could damage the surface of your trigger. In my opinion, this is a firearm. It is meant to, let's say, be damaged, but meant to be used. So I got the pin started. Now, let's say punch it the rest of the way through, but push it the rest of the way through with my hammer so that it is flat and flush. All right, so my trigger is now installed. Now we have to do the reassembly of the pistol. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is, again, make sure everything is fine. I'm going to take the trigger shoe and the ejector, and I'm going to line this up and get the ejector, the spring. What is the spring called? 21. The sear spring on the trigger bar, just to make it easier on myself. And unfortunately, it's hard for me to try to, basically I'm just going to reach under and catch the sear spring with the trigger shoe and get everything lined up. There we go. That's how that works, just like that. It's much easier to do this outside of the pistol. From back to front, let's put the trigger shoe on the spring. Trigger shoe on the spring. Let's get the back down and in. I'm going to put the trigger shoe down in place with the trigger bar. I'm going to get the locking block with the slide stop spring. You'll see there's a hole on the side of the locking block. I'm going to put that into place. We're going to get that down in next. Put that down in place. With the trigger in place, the next thing I want to do is make sure that I put the slide stop back in to retain the locking bar, and you saw everything went in without a hitch. Next thing you have to do is make sure that the trigger is lined up properly, and that's what the slide stop is going to do. Line the trigger up, push it in. It does not have to go all the way in completely, especially because we need to get the lock back on. So we're going to take the right side slide release, put it up 90 degrees, flip it down, and then push the slide stop in and through. And then I'm going to take my slide stop spring and put it back into place. Flip it up and back into place. Come on. Try from the other side. All right, so there you can see the spring is on the bar, and I'm just going to slide it closer to the left side of the frame with a grip. There we go. And now the slide stop is back. Oh, no. This will test your patience. As you can see, there's a place for the slide stop spring to ride in. There's an indentation, so just make sure that the slide stop spring is in that indentation on the slide stop. That is back into place, and I'm going to check for function on the trigger. before I go too far in putting everything together, the trigger functions properly. It's not binding, it's not sticking. Right? Next thing I'm going to do is put the rear pin in, because the extractor or ejector is moving around. So let's put the rear pin in. I'm not going to push it all the way in, just to make sure that I can check for function before I put everything completely, reassemble everything. The next thing, I'm going to take the locking lever and the spring. Now the locking lever, there's a flat portion and there's a angled portion. That flat portion is going to go towards the back of the pistol. You're going to push it into the hole here on the locking block. Push it down and in. You have to push it down in order to get the pin back through there. It will take a little force to push the pin through that. You're going to push it through, but don't send it all the way through. And let's see, will this go back in? Yes. I forgot to put the right side back on before the locking block, but I was able to get it underneath of there. So we're going to push this up just enough so that this pin can get right through it and be sent home. You see how it is there? And check for function on the locking pin and the locking latch. Next thing, last thing, we're going to take the front pin and push it through. And actually we'll do this on this side. Push it through. And that one I'm going to send all the way home. And this one in the back, we're going to send it. Oh, that was passed. And we'll just do it against the. Send it all the way back home. Again, checking for function. Next thing I'll do is get the slide. Before I put the slide on, I'm going to put a little bit of oil because I wiped all of the oil out of here on the hot spots. 3, 4, and where the barrel slides. Take the slide, put it on, check for function, and there you have it. A flat trigger installation on the Canik Mete MC9LS. Now all I have to do is take this to the range. But drastically reduces the travel on the trigger. That's rather difficult for me to try to do this and capture it. So there is the brake and the release. All right, so hopefully you found this helpful, and whether you were installing the 90-degree brake directly from Canik or like a Freedom Smith trigger, hopefully you felt this, you found this helpful. If you did, please let me know down below, leave me a comment, or if there's anything else you would like to see with a repair or a fix on a Canik pistol, let me know and maybe I can oblige you. Anyway, thanks again as always for watching. I'll see you next time.